Hi, everyone. Welcome to Leisrealtalk. All right. I saw a comment earlier. Someone asked, is it me or is it 2025 started bouncy? Well, I think 2025 so far has been eventful. So before I begin, I want to first say that I hope all my viewers in Los Angeles or greater Los Angeles area survived the fires and didn't suffer great losses. What we saw in the past 2 days in LA is beyond words. It's heartbreaking. At the turn of 2024 and 2025, the world has been in a state of turbulence and rapid changes. Today, we'll conduct a comprehensive analysis on one such event. South Korea's political landscape has long been a focal point for external forces, including China, the United States, Japan, and the others. The ongoing political upheaval in the country, where conservatives and liberals are locked in a fierce battle over President Yoon's impeachment, carries profound geopolitical implications. It's been reported in the West, but I think very superficially, without depth and real insights. However, its impact extends far beyond South Korea and the Asia-Pacific region, and it deserves a good 40 minutes of our time. So I have been thoroughly prepared for tonight's talk. So I'll first give you the latest. I'll give you an update on the latest development, and then we will give a historical analysis of South Korea's relations with China and the U.S. And then we'll address a very important question. I know it's something that people have been thinking. Why Korean politics are so divided? And then we will discuss why is South Korea strategically important to Beijing. That segment is very important. And then we'll summarize the 4 challenges that South Korea faces. And then last but not least, what will come next? All right, so first, quick overview and update. So on December 3rd, 2024, South Korea President Yoon Suk-yeol declared martial law, marking the beginning of a month of dramatic political changes in the country. He was impeached, followed by the impeachment and the removal of acting president Han Duck-soo, and the current acting president, Choi Sang-mak, was reportedly placed under investigation by South Korean police and faced possible impeachment. Now, it's important to know that the 2 acting presidents are not affiliated with President Yoon's party. In fact, they're not affiliated with either political party, as Korean law requires that civil servants not participating in any political party or social organization. And that's where the 2 acting presidents, their categorization was they're considered civil servants. So Yoon's supporters have been holding large public rallies to support him in front of the presidential residence, waving American flags and signs that say "Stop the Steal," and that's the one that I could read in English, but there are other signs. I was told that they also hold signs that says "Make Korea Great Again." Now, they're doing this in sub-zero temperature. And also those who are in favor of the arrest and impeachment have also been rallying too. On January 3rd, investigators from the CIO, which stands for Corruption Investigation Office, failed to arrest President Yoon after a 6-hour standoff with Yoon's security team and withdrew from the presidential residence. The arrest warrant expired on January the 6th, and the CIO sought a new warrant and kept the expiration date of the new warrant a secret. It's reported today that they plan to deploy 2,800 people using armored personnel carrier and possibly helicopters to drop special police units into the presidential compounds in a push to arrest President Yoon. Now, President Yoon's lawyer said the arrest warrant was illegal as it was issued by a court in the wrong jurisdiction, and the CIO had no mandate to investigate a sitting president for insurrection. And the president will accept, he said he will accept the decision of the Constitutional Court that is trying Parliament's impeachment case against him. And the Constitutional Court has slated January 14th for the start of Yoon's impeachment trial. So now, South Korean president is the most dangerous job in the world. Since the founding of the Republic of Korea, the country has had 13 presidents. Of the 12 presidents before Yoon, one was assassinated, one committed suicide, 2 lost power in a military coup, 2 were forced to resign, 3 were sentenced to prison terms, ranging from 17 years to 24 years and to a life sentence. 2 had family scandals resulting in their children being imprisoned. The only president who seems relatively trouble-free is Yoon's predecessor, President Moon Jae-in. So before addressing why South Korean politics are so divided, let's review South Korea's relations with the North, China, and the US. So since its founding, South Korea has consistently faced military threats from the North. Now, from 1948, from the late 1940s to the early 1970s, North Korea was far wealthier than the South due to 2 reasons. The first was that it was the support of the Soviet Union. And the second was the industrialization in the North that was left from the Japanese colonial period. So at that time, South Korea could not compete with the North in terms of economy or military capabilities. So South Koreans heavily relied on a military alliance with the US to deter North Korean military threats. Under President Park Chung-hee, who was in office from the 1960s to the 1970s, he was in office for over a decade, for quite a long time. So under his presidency, South Korea achieved rapid economic development and democratization, and surpassing the North economically in the late 1980s. After South Korea and China established diplomatic relations, I think it was in August 1992, South Korea took full advantage of the Chinese market and inexpensive labor, leading to another phase of rapid economic growth. Since the 1990s, South Korea has adopted a strategy that relies on the US for national security and depends on China for economic growth. So the policy is referred to as, quote, security from the US and economy from China. However, by the 2010s, China was no longer merely an economic partner for South Korea, but a major competitor. I'll give you a few examples to illustrate this point. So South Korea's shipbuilders once dominated the global market, but Chinese shipbuilders have overtaken them in volume by offering lower cost options and gaining access to advanced designs. Chinese companies have aggressively pursued semiconductor technology, with cases of South Korean engineers being poached and proprietary processes stolen. South Korean steelmaker POSCO, P-O-S-C-O, entered the Chinese market to expand its business, but faced technology leaks and intellectual property theft. Chinese firms now produce low-cost steel, and South Korea's shipbuilding sector has been importing Chinese steel. South Korean dominance in OLED and LCD technology has been challenged by Chinese companies like BOE and CSOT. A 2021 case involved South Korean engineers accused of leaking OLED technology to China. Koreans still maintains a lead in OLED displays, but China has surpassed in LCD production capacity and volume. So these are just a few examples. So when the trade war between the US and China erupted in 2018 during the first Trump administration, South Korea faced a significant dilemma. South Korea found itself in a predicament, unable to abandon either China or the US within the framework of security from the US, economy from China. Now, Xi Jinping's policies, such as the national security law, the anti-espionage law, and zero COVID, have driven foreign businesses away. And additionally, the growing pressure from the US-led Western countries on China's economy and security has intensified. And if Trump begins his second term, or when, I shouldn't say if, I should say when he begins his second term, which is in a week, right? No, in 11 days? Yeah, in 11 days. These pressures will likely increase. So as a result, South Korea now has no choice but to prioritize cooperation with the US for both economic and security concerns. And China is no longer a primary partner for South Korea. However, that's the vision President Yoon has had. However, many Korean citizens, Korean elites, and politicians who have been carefully groomed by Beijing aren't ready for this strategic change because Korean politics have always been very divided. So now let's talk about why South Korean politics are so divided. Well, in terms of political orientation, South Korean politics can be divided into conservatives and the left wing, the Conservative People's Power Party and the leftist Democratic Party of Korea. So these are the two main parties on the left and on the right. Internationally, the pro-American faction aligns with the conservative right, while the pro-North and pro-China faction aligns with the left-wing Democratic Party. And the 70-year political history of South Korea is essentially a struggle between these two factions, or between these two factions. So let's talk about the political transformation in South Korea. The democratization of South Korea began in 1986. Before that, from 1948, when the South Korean government was officially established, to 1986, there were 38 years of authoritarian rule. And during this period, political power was held by the conservatives who were pro-West or pro-America. And then in the next 38 years of democratization from 1986 to the present, the left wing gained popularity. And the two wings have alternated in power through national elections, but the struggles between them have been intense. The term of South Korean president is only 5 years, and they cannot be re-elected. Therefore, every president must complete their political achievements within the 5 years to ensure their party can continue governing. Conversely, the opposition party would do everything to prevent the president from achieving anything or any success. Whatever the president proposes, the opposition will oppose it. The opposition party does not cooperate with the president or the ruling party, right? Because helping the president succeed will mean no chance for them to win in the next presidential election. And this applies to both parties. Whichever party is in power, this problem persists. So historically, the relationship between the left wing and the right wing in South Korea has been terrible. And there's a lack of mutual trust and no mechanisms for collaboration or reconciliation between the two sides. And this is one of the biggest issues in South Korean politics. And to complicate the matter, The Chinese Communist Party and the North Koreans have undoubtedly exploited this gap and taken advantage. So now let's talk about why South Korea is strategically important to Beijing. So for Beijing, the most important foreign relations is the one with the United States, but the most sensitive one is with South Korea. So why South Korea holds the most sensitive relations with the CCP? The reason is very simple. The geographical proximity between the two countries has determined it. The shortest distance from South Korea to Beijing is only 900 kilometers, which is about 550 miles, which is only a half-hour flight for an ordinary jet and 20 minutes for a more advanced jet. And South Korea has a large presence of American troops. So the United States has about 23,000 troops stationed in South Korea. And to put this into perspective, after the war in Afghanistan, U.S. troop levels there never exceeded 10,000, despite daily conflicts in Afghanistan at the time. South Korea, being the country that's the closest to China, with a large American military presence, becomes a very touchy subject to the Chinese. For the CCP, the U.S. military presence in South Korea is what people say is like a dagger placed right next to one's heart. As a result, the CCP has deployed its most advanced air defense systems in the Bohai Bay area. For example, in the past, the CCP's 39th Army was always stationed in a heavily fortified area in Wafangdian area near Dalian, right next, actually in Dalian, in the Liaoning province, with the Luisong port in front and the Huludao in the back. So the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy has several components, and one of them is the military alliance with Japan and South Korea. And it's often referred to as the Iron Triangle. And the proximity of this alliance to the CCP's core regions also makes Beijing uneasy. So in addition to the 23,000 troops in South Korea, the United States has about 36,000 troops in Japan. And the combined U.S. troop presence in Japan and South Korea is approximately 60,000. And that's significant. Although ostensibly aimed at North Korea, this alliance is primarily to counter China and Russia. And in the current geopolitical context, it's mostly to counter China. And this is why of all of China's neighbors, except Taiwan, South Korea is the country where the CCP has exerted the most influence. Just to show you China's influence in South Korea, in the past few weeks since the impeachment of President Yoon surfaced, Chinese apps are suddenly dominating the top download rankings in the Korean App Store. Let me show you a picture. Here we go. I did. So if you look at the top 10, and I mean this shows top 20 apps down, by download volume. In the top 10, you see 5 of them are Chinese apps. Number 1, number 3 are all Chinese, and number 1 is an app that checks internet speed, and number 3, I don't understand, is it's a music application. It's for to make music beats. It's a beat maker, music beat maker, So, and then you see Temu as number 8. So this is so strange, right? And people wonder what has happened? Why all of a sudden Koreans are so enthusiastic about Chinese apps? So it's just I mean, I don't really have a technical answer for that, but I think it shows you um, the CCP's influence in South Korea. And even if they manipulate this, they were able to, manipulate it. I don't think that Koreans have that much interest in Chinese apps. So this could have been manipulated with fake traffic. But anyways, but even that were the case, that shows you the CCP's influence, the fact that they were able to do this, right? So for the CCP, breaking this US, Japan, South Korea military alliance is of critical importance. And the weakest link, oh, by the way, I just want to say I have made videos that talk about CCP's influence in South Korea. And Chris, if you can, come back. Chris, if you can, maybe copy paste the links in the description so people can watch them. I'm not going to go too much into detail about CCP's influence in South Korea. I only wanted to show you the app, the download. I think those are amazing. I mean, unbelievable, should I say? So, so now we talk about, we're talking about why South Korea is strategically important to the Chinese. So for the CCP, breaking this US, Japan, and South Korea military alliance is of critical importance. And the weakest link in this alliance is the South Korea-Japan relationship. In other words, disrupting the relationship between South Korea and Japan has been a key CCP objective. During Moon Jae-in's administration, the CCP achieved considerable success in this regard. South Korea's relations with the CCP, South Korea's relationship with CCP became very close, while its diplomatic, political, and military ties with Japan plunged to a freezing point. Even economic and trade relations were affected. Military relations were particularly strained, with South Korea and Japan not only halting all military interactions, but also ending intelligence sharing. At that time, the US, Japan, South Korea Iron Triangle became two bilateral relations. The US-South Korea military relations also weakened, with joint military exercises between the two countries significantly reduced in scale and frequency. So the Moon Jae-in era was regarded by the CCP as the most successful period in dealing with South Korean affairs. However, after Yoon Suk-yeol became president, the situation changed dramatically. Not only is Yoon pro-American, but he has also greatly improved relations with Japan, leading to the restoration of the Iron Triangle. Now, with Donald Trump about to take office again, the CCP feels a greater need to break that Iron Triangle. So this context is an important backdrop to the current situation in South Korea. So I want to quickly talk about the four major problems that South Korea faces now. The first is strong pro-North Korea forces. So a major issue is the presence of pro-North Korea forces in the South. These factions criticize South Korea's conservative government and its good relations with the United States. And they unconditionally praise North Korea and try to pursue pro-North policies. And the second problem is Beijing's excessive influence in South Korea, which I have discussed before. The left believes that China has a certain degree of influence over North Korea, and therefore insists on cooperating with China in all areas to maintain peace on the Korean Peninsula. This has resulted in making significant concessions to China, especially during the Moon Jae-in's administration, which adopted a submissive attitude toward China. And this allowed the CCP to be able to consistently interfere in South Korea's domestic affairs, and causing great dissatisfactions among the conservatives. And the third is election fraud. The CCP's United Front Work Department, in collaboration with the left wing, has allegedly been involved in manipulating various elections in South Korea. So, for example, in the 22nd National Assembly elections held on April 10th, 2024, at least 30 constituencies were reportedly subject to fraudulent votes, resulting in people questioning the victories of over 30 lawmakers. However, opposition from the Democratic Party has prevented investigations from proceeding. So through left-wing politicians and their circles, Beijing has great influence in many aspects of South Korean society, including the National Assembly, local governments, media, unions, academia, the arts and cultural sectors, and even in judiciary. So for example, the Seoul Western District Court was the court that issued the arrest warrant for President Yoon. The arrest warrant was issued to the CIO, the Corruption Investigation Office. However, the CIO does not have the authority to apply for an arrest warrant against the president under the charges of treason. And even if they did, the application should have been made to the Central District Court, not the Western District Court. But the CIO disregarded the rules because the Western Court, known for its high number of left-wing judges, became an ideal choice for the CIO in an attempt to secure approvals from judges. And the last serious problem facing South Korea is severe CCP espionage activities and the lack of counteraction. The CCP's covert espionage activities in South Korea are highly serious. The examples being the operations of the Confucius Institutes, secret police stations, industrial espionage, and the collection of South Korea's national security and corporate intelligence. That's already known. We've covered that before. However, a bigger problem is that, according to Korean legal professionals, South Korea's National Security Act does not provide any measures to restrict CCP espionage activities, and the criminal law has vague definitions of espionage. The National Security Act was designed to target pro-North Korean forces and is completely inapplicable to the CCP's activities. And this was explained by one law professor. He also noted that the limitations of the criminal code. He said the espionage clause in the criminal code does not define what constitutes a spy, nor does it elaborate on the concept of enemy states. So with the parliament in control by the left-wing party, to amend these laws, these criminal codes has been almost impossible for the president. So what's next? Will President Yoon be impeached? Well, his lawyers said that the ongoing battle is an ideological war between two sets of values. And I agree. The ongoing impeachment case is being tried at the Constitutional Court. And there are a total, which is the highest court alongside the Supreme Court. And so there are a total of 9 judges. There's supposed to be a total of 9 judges. For any impeachment case, the approval by 6 or more judges is necessary for the impeachment to pass. If fewer than 6 judges approve it, the impeachment is rejected. So at the beginning of this political storm, there were only 6 judges, and 3 of the positions were vacant. So as of the end of 2024, acting president Choi Sang-mok appointed 2 more judges, making the total at 8. The court can now go ahead with the trial, but 6 of the 8 judges must vote in favor of the impeachment for it to be valid, for President Yoon to be officially suspended. Or he's actually temporarily suspended. I mean, for him to be formally impeached, I should say. So of the current 8 judges, 3 are left-wing and will certainly vote in favor of the impeachment. The remaining 5 judges are centrists or right-wing. So they may not agree with the left-wing judges. So Korean experts say that the most likely outcome will be a 4-4 split, or at most a 5-3 split, with 5 in favor and 3 against. So this is fewer than 6 votes needed for the impeachment to be valid. Of course, this is just people's, estimates or analysis. We don't know what will actually happen until the time the judges do vote. So President Yoon still has a good chance of navigating through the storm and come out safely. And perhaps this is why his opponent is trying so hard to arrest him, for the purpose of tarnishing his reputation, to show images, because if he's arrested, he will be handcuffed. So that's why they try so hard trying to arrest him, to show images of him being handcuffed, right, to damage his reputation, so that this will have an impact on the judges, and that may influence them when it comes to voting for the impeachment. And the impeachment case against the president began the review on the last day of 2024, and a decision must be made within 180 days. However, it could be much quicker because there are 2 precedents. The impeachment of former President Roh was decided in 63 days, and that of former President Park was in 91 days. So this political drama can continue, or may continue, for a couple of more months. And that's all I have. I know it's a lot of information. I hope it's helpful. Let's see. Have I lost people? I know this is not necessarily a popular or trending topic, because take a look at there aren't that many people joining the live, but I feel like all the mainstream media is not reporting this subject as in depth as they should. So that's what I think this deserves a program from us. All right, let's see. I hope this is helpful. I think it's important. Okay, all right. What's the snack for today? Pineapple? That sounds very good. I could enjoy a piece of pineapple right now. Okay, all right. All right, that's all. I'm just scrolling down to see if there are any questions for me. I don't see my name popping up. I think I did exceptionally well tonight with no questions. Let's see. Seriously, yeah, no. Oh, here's one. Mark Pollard. Why doesn't the South Korean government realize that China clearly wants to destroy it and bolster the North? It's because a lot of them have been compromised. The level of, because the CCP know how to do their influence campaign, you know. Uh, I mean, what you're asking the question, why do you think the brother of um what's his name? Jeb Bush? What's his George W. Bush? The brother, the son, the other son of the Bush senior, uh, has been a spokesperson for the CCP in the past couple of years. I mean, he was recently interviewed um, by one of the Chinese journalists, bilingual journalist, and he even admits that uh, he's not popular in the U.S., but he's adamant about speaking up for China. But why do you think there? I mean, it's not in why? I mean, it's not speaking up for China at this point is not popular. But why do you think he chose to do that? Right? Because the CCP knows how to influence, how to manipulate and influence people, how to get people to work for them. And also in the end, I think it's a question is, do you take your personal interest before your country's interest, or do you take your country's interest before your own? I mean, that's a question for all politicians. But unfortunately, we've had many politicians around the world, not just necessarily in South Korea, in all parts of the world, who don't take their country's interest seriously, right? Okay, here's a question. Joe Naveen, what on earth would motivate any South Korean to be pro-North Korean? Well, that's a good question, but I think they're not so much I mean, I think they're anti-American. The idea is, I mean, there are Koreans who believe that the North um, has they think that the government in the North has some level of legitimacy because in the old days, I mean, I'm not familiar with this part of the Korean history, but I was told that some South Koreans believe that um, the real authority in Korea, in the Korean peninsula, rests in the North geographically. So they think that they cannot afford to alienate the North if they still think they're one country. So that could be, and so no matter what, North Koreans are Koreans and Americans are Americans. So yeah, from that perspective, they are leaning towards the North, or they think that they cannot afford to alienate the North. That's a good question. Okay. Radnofo, lay important and helpful. Thank you. Well, I agree. I agree it's important. I hope it's helpful. Okay, here's a question that Chris forwarded from Joe Naveen. Lay, what on earth? Okay, I already answered that question. Oh, here's a question from Nick Fury. Furry. How does Kim feel about Xi trying to grab his South Korean gal? Any hard feelings? I think Kim Jong-un, by blowing up the monument that says that declared unification, by burning up the roads that lead to the South, I think he has made up his mind that unification is not on his agenda. I mean, economically, he realized unification means that the North would be taken over by the South, because there's no way that the South Koreans will want to live like the North Koreans do. So economically, so that's why Kim has already given up the idea of unification. But 40 years ago, it wasn't like that. The North was more prosperous than the South. So his grandfather was adamant about unification. So how does he feel about So he has, I think from his perspective, he's like, okay, I'm just going to take care of the North. That's my kingdom. So as far as what Xi Jinping does with the South, he felt like it's not of his interest because he's not interested in unification with the South. Okay, sorry. Let me see. Texas Panda. Great job as always. Well, thank you. Thank you, Panda. From Galia. Does China power instability influence the infiltration in South Korea? Well, has China's power instability influenced the infiltration in the United States? Not a bit. I think the agents, the individuals the CCP has implemented, installed in the U.S. are acting up, are doing their jobs. So the instabilities in China are only at the grassroots level, targeting ordinary Chinese, but the CCP is not is not stinging. Is not, what's that word? It's still willing to spend money for these influence operations. So it's not affecting that. And this is what CCP does well. This is how it obtained power in 1949. This is how it drove the Kuomintang government to Taiwan. Not because it's strong economically, not because its military power was superior. It was purely because it knows how to infiltrate your opponent's organization and obtain an advantage in that way. So this is how it wins every time. And take a look at the South Korea. I mean, it's I don't think the South Korean society would be so divided without the CCP's influence. I think the two sides will fight, but it wouldn't be so intense. It's almost like a life and death kind of a fight, political fight. It's abnormal. I don't think it's normal. So I don't attribute that to South Koreans' tendency to fight with their opponents. I attribute that to the influence campaign coming from the North and the CCP because it's abnormal. For Moonwalker, there are over 1 million illegal Chinese residents in South Korea. I would assume those app downloads are from them. Other than Temu, Korea really has no interest in Chinese apps. Yeah, but so that means that this 1 million Chinese, illegal Chinese, suddenly were being ordered to everyone download these apps. And so that means, right? So what this tells us is this 1 million Chinese are being tightly controlled by the CCP. The CCP has a mechanism in place to manipulate this 1 million Chinese in South Korea. And that's dangerous. That's alarming, isn't it? Lay with the pretty hair. Is it pretty? I think I could do better. All right. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Okay, here's a question that Chris forwarded from James Asbury. Thank you for explaining it to me. I have stopped watching the mainstream media, so I need other sources. Thank you. Yeah, this is because I've been trying to find out. I mean, I have been trying to find out what's going on in South Korea. There's not a lot of information. So I did spend a lot of time trying to, put this information together. So that's what I think it's important to share that with you. Because the mainstream media's coverage is so superficial. They just follow the mainstream media in South Korea. Crotchety Elder, do you foresee the Korean Peninsula being reunited anytime in the near future? I think when the CCP falls, the North will fall. I think when CCP falls, disintegrates. When China becomes a democratic country, I think big changes will take place in the Korean Peninsula. That's what I believe. I think so. Odd Dude says, North Korea and CCP have been infiltrating the South Korean education system for years. Generations have been brainwashed. Unfortunately, that's the case. China has the most Confucius institutes in South Korea. Could you imagine that? I mean, South Korea only has a population of, 53 million? But they have the most Confucius institutes. From Brian Cobb. Thank you, Brian, for the super sticker. I don't understand why South Korea has a left-wing party. South Korea was on the front line of the Cold War. About 400,000 South Korean soldiers were killed in the Korean War. Well, actually, it's very interesting. Like in Taiwan, I'll give you an example. In Taiwan, the Kuomintang, it's the opposite. The Kuomintang, the older political parties tend to be conservative, and then the newer parties tend to be more more progressive and more on the right. But in the case of Taiwan, the progressive party, the DPP in Taiwan, is not pro-China. It's pro-independence, but they're socially more progressive, but they are against the CCP. Whereas the Kuomintang is socially conservative, but they are pro-CCP. And that's the case in Taiwan. So in the case of South Korea, I think the older party is more conservative, so conservative in value, but they have, but they are more pro-West because of the historical background. I mean, they have been relying on the United States to deter the threat from the North. So it's the opposite in Taiwan and South Korea. So to answer your question, I think the newer political parties tend to be more progressive, and the older political party that have been around tend to be more conservative, right? Like the GOP is the good old party. I don't know if they've been around longer. I think they're actually a newer political party, right? They were founded by President Lincoln. So I don't know, but that's the case in South Korea. But I guess your your social value has nothing to do with whether you're pro-CCP or pro-North. Those two have no connection, because in the case of Taiwan, it's the Progressive Party is not pro-CCP. So yeah. All right. That seems to be all. Oh, here's one more question. Netflix Foreign. Does she really think China can hold Korea? They have constantly failed in the past, consistently or constantly. What do you mean by hold Korea? I mean, they have been successful. I mean, I'm sure that Xi Jinping is very happy with the latest development in Korea, because I mean, if they're able to remove a pro-US president and install a pro-China, pro-North president in South Korea, then the Iron Triangle is effectively ineffective, right? So I don't understand the question. What do you mean? I mean, China doesn't have to hold South Korea. I think China feels very confident. I think China has already been influencing the South Korean society long enough to feel confident about what they're doing there. So I think he has the confidence. Unfortunately, it's not a good thing for the West, but the damage is done unless the Korean people, you know, wake up and understand the risk. Mark Polar, how would the Kim family have any legitimate authority in South Korea? Wasn't communism an uprising and rebelling? I think it's. I'm not talking about the Kim family have legitimate authority in the South. I think it has to go back to the time before the Civil War. I think this. I'm not familiar with the history, but this is what I heard. I think historically, the North, the kingdom, uh, the king is always in the North. Maybe that's why, and this has nothing to do with Kim Jong Un's family. But the South may always see the North as their true capital, or where the head of state should be based. All right. Okay. Roth. I generally agree with Lei, yet the only part Lei seems missing out is the moon is still the major political player in South Korea politics, and he is very pro-China, anti-American. Yeah, he is. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think you're right. So he is, but he's also under post-presidency investigation by his political opponent, by Yoon's party. But if you look at all the Korean presidents, he's the only one who seems to have suffered the least consequences after his presidency. So yeah, you're right. He is still a major political player. But then, given the history of how the previous 12 presidents or previous 11 presidents didn't end well, I think he may want to stay low key, out of trouble. Because why would he want to, get active in politics again, only to be in trouble? Because all of his predecessors, no one came out um, well. I mean, no one ended well. I mean, it's either them going to the prison or their children going to be locked up, or they have to exile. So far, he's the only one who has had a relatively uneventful ending. So why does he want to break that and be active again in opposing the Conservative Party, only to be investigated and being locked up like all of his predecessors? So you're right, but then I'm just offering a different perspective, maybe from his personal point of view. He doesn't want to be active again. Right. All right. Mitch, I did a lot of research on Asian countries. Almost all of the Asian countries are ran authoritarian dictatorship ran. True or false? Well, Taiwan is an exception, right? Japan, Taiwan, Japan, they have peaceful transfer of power between different political parties. So I wouldn't say that all Asian countries were. I mean, they were, the Taiwanese politics were authoritarian, like the South Korean, but in the past 20 years, it has been peaceful. Okay, I think that's all. That's all. I've reached the bottom of the questions. I'll end it here. I'm a little thirsty. I could eat a piece of fruit right now. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day or rest of your night. Those of you who are in Los Angeles, stay safe, stay well. And that's all. Thank you. Bye bye.